When Dawna received the invitation to the Alpha King's mating ceremony, she knew it had to be a mistake. She was nobody, a rogue wolf with no pack, no family, no past. Yet here she stood at the edge of the sacred ceremonial grounds, watching nobles in silks and furs gather beneath ancient stone arches draped in moonflowers. The invitation burned in her pocket like a brand, heavy parchment, royal seal, her name Dawna written in elegant script, though she couldn't remember ever telling anyone that name. She'd found it 5 years ago in a dream, whispered by a voice she couldn't place. "You don't belong here," she muttered to herself, silver white hair catching the torchlight as she lingered near the entrance. Around her, wolves in human form laughed and embraced, their pack bonds visible in the easy way they touched, the knowing glances they shared. She had none of that. She'd had nothing for 5 years but the forest and her own shadow. Still, something pulled her forward, something she couldn't name. The ceremonial ground opened before her, a vast courtyard of polished stone surrounded by towering pillars carved with wolves and moons. Hundreds of candles flickered in the evening air, and the scent of sage and cedarwood smoke hung heavy. At the far end, beneath an arch of woven branches, stood an empty throne. Dawna slipped into the crowd, keeping to the edges. No one looked at her. No one noticed the rogue in borrowed clothes, too fine for someone who'd spent the last month mucking stables for a meal. Then the horns sounded 3 long, resonant notes that vibrated in her chest. The crowd parted like water, and he entered, Alpha King Kaelix. Dawna's breath caught. She'd never seen him before, had never even been close enough to the capital to glimpse royalty, but she knew him. The recognition hit her like a fist to the sternum, sudden and violent. Her wolf, dormant and quiet for so long, surged to the surface with a whine that echoed only in her mind. He was tall, powerfully built, with flowing white hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes like molten amber that seemed to see everything. He wore ceremonial armor, black leather and silver plates, and a crown of twisted iron that sat on his brow like it had been forged there. His presence was overwhelming, suffocating, and magnetic, and his gaze swept the crowd, then stopped. On her, Dawna froze, her pulse hammered in her throat. Those amber eyes locked onto hers across the distance, and for one impossible moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. His expression shifted surprise, recognition, something fierce and possessive that made her knees weak. "No," she whispered, "that's not possible." But she felt it, the pull, the need. Her wolf recognized him in a way that transcended logic or memory. The ceremony began. A priestess in white robes stepped forward, chanting in the old tongue as smoke rose from braziers. Kaelix took his place before the throne, but his gaze kept drifting back to her. Dawna pressed herself against a pillar, trying to disappear, trying to understand what was happening. Then the priestess raised her hands to the moon and called for the sacred silence. The crowd stilled. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. And in that perfect, reverent quiet, an arrow shrieked through the air. Dawna saw it, a black bolt streaking toward her, impossibly fast. She tried to move, tried to shift, but her body wouldn't respond. The arrow struck her chest with brutal force, punching through flesh and bone. Pain exploded white-hot and all-consuming. She gasped, staggered backward. Her hands came away red, so much red. Screams erupted around her. The crowd scattered, but Dawna couldn't process any of it. Her legs buckled, the world tilted, and she fell, into arms that caught her before she hit the ground. "No," a voice growled, raw and furious. "No." She looked up through blurring vision and saw him. Kaelix, the Alpha King. His amber eyes burned into hers, wild with terror and rage. His hands pressed against her wound, trying to stem the bleeding. But she could feel the life draining from her with every frantic beat of her heart. "Stay with me," he commanded, his voice breaking. "Don't you dare leave me. Not now, not when I just found you." She wanted to ask what he meant. wanted to understand why the Alpha King was holding her like she mattered, like she was something precious. But darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, thick and relentless. The last thing she saw was his face above hers, desperate, protective, anguished, and the last thing she heard was his voice, a broken whisper. "You're mine, my mate, I know you." Then the world went black.
Wait, before we continue. You need to subscribe right now. Would you trust the Alpha King's claim that you're his mate, or would you run? Comment your answer below, and if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button now, or you'll miss the most intense part of this story. Trust me, you don't want to miss what Morse has planned.
When Dawna woke, she wasn't dead. That was her first thought, a dull, confused realization that cut through the haze of pain. Her second thought was that she didn't recognize where she was. The room around her was massive and opulent in a way that made her breath catch. High vaulted ceilings with exposed wooden beams, tapestries depicting wolves under moonlight, a fireplace large enough to stand in, flames crackling softly. The bed beneath her was impossibly soft, piled with furs and silks that smelled of cedarwood and something else, something wild and masculine that made her wolf stir with interest. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her chest, sharp and breath-stealing. She gasped, clutched at the bandages wrapped around her torso, and, "Don't move." Her head snapped toward the voice. He was there. Alpha King Kaelix, sitting in a chair beside the bed, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His white hair was disheveled, no longer bound in the ceremonial style. His armor was gone, replaced by a simple black tunic that revealed the corded muscle of his forearms. And his hands were stained with dried blood. Her blood. "You," Dawna's voice came out hoarse, barely a whisper. "You saved me." His amber eyes met hers, and the intensity there stole what little breath she had left. "I couldn't let you die." His voice was rough, gravelly, like he'd been screaming. "My wolf wouldn't allow it. I don't understand." She looked around the room again, realization dawning. "Where am I?" "My chambers." Her eyes snapped back to him. "Your what?" The healing wing wasn't safe. He stood, moving closer to the bed, and she noticed the exhaustion etched into his features, the darkness under his eyes. "There was another attempt while you were unconscious, poison in the medicine. I couldn't risk." His jaw clenched. "You're staying here, where I can protect you." Dawna's mind reeled. "Another attempt? Someone tried to kill me again? Someone wants you dead before the bond can form." He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle her, and reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. "But they failed. You're alive, and you're mine." "I don't." She struggled to form words, to make sense of any of this. "I don't even know you." Something flickered in his eyes, pain, longing, frustration. "No, but I know you." His thumb brushed her cheekbone, and she shivered despite herself. "The moment you walked onto those ceremonial grounds, my wolf recognized you, claimed you." The way he said her name like it was sacred, like it meant everything, made something in her chest crack open. "That's impossible," she whispered, but even as she said it, she felt the truth of it, the pull, the rightness of his touch. "I'm nobody. I'm a rogue, with no past, no pack, no. You're mine." His voice was fierce, absolute. "That's all that matters." Tears burned her eyes, and she hated herself for it. "You don't understand. I don't even know if I'm worthy of Don't." He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Don't say that. Don't ever say that." His eyes blazed with something raw and protective. "Someone shot you with an arrow during a sacred ceremony. Someone is hunting you, and I will find out who and why. But until then, you're staying here, with me, where no one can hurt you." Dawna's breath hitched. She wanted to argue, wanted to run like she always did. But something in his gaze held her captive. Something that promised safety, protection, belonging. And for the first time in 5 years, she didn't feel alone. Then came the knock on the door, urgent, insistent. Kaelix's expression hardened. "What?" The door opened, and a tall man with dark hair stepped inside. "My king, there's been a development. The Master of Arms requests an audience. He says he knows who attacked your guest." Kaelix's hand on Dawna's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "Tell Morse I'll see him shortly." The man nodded and left. Dawna's heart raced. "Morse? My Master of Arms." Kaelix's gaze returned to her, searching. "Why? Do you know that name?" She didn't, not consciously. But something about it sent ice through her veins, a primal, instinctive terror that she couldn't explain. "I don't know," she whispered. "But something about it feels wrong." Kaelix's expression turned dangerous. "Then I'll be watching him very carefully." He stood, reluctance written in every line of his body. "Rest. Heal. I'll return soon." He paused at the door, looked back at her with those burning amber eyes. "You're safe here, Dawna. I promise you that. No one will hurt you again." And as he left, Dawna realized with terrifying clarity. She believed him. But she also knew with the certainty of prey recognizing a predator that whoever had tried to kill her wasn't finished. And they were closer than either of them realized. The hours passed slowly in the gilded cage of Kaelix's chambers. Dawna moved carefully from the bed to the window, her chest aching with each breath, and stared out at the sprawling castle grounds below. Wolves in human form moved through courtyards and training yards, all belonging to something larger than themselves. She pressed her palm against the cool glass, feeling more isolated than she had in years. The door opened without warning, and a tall man with dark hair and sharp features entered. He carried himself like a warrior, all coiled strength and watchful eyes. "I'm Theron," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "head of the Royal Guard. His Majesty asked me to check on you." "To guard me, you mean?" Dawna didn't turn from the window. "Or to make sure I don't run?" "Both, if I'm being honest." There was no judgment in his tone, but mostly to keep you alive. "Someone wants you dead badly enough to violate sacred ground." She finally looked at him. "Why would anyone want to kill me? I'm nobody." Theron's expression softened. "You're the Alpha King's mate. That makes you everything to some people, and a threat to others." The weight of that settled over her like a shroud. Beyond the door, she could hear whispers filtering through the corridors. Servants speaking in hushed tones about the rogue in the king's bed. Nobles questioning her bloodline, her worth, her very existence. When Kaelix returned as evening fell, he carried a tray himself. Dawna watched in disbelief as the Alpha King set food before her like a common servant. "You shouldn't be doing that," she said quietly. "I don't trust anyone else near you." He sat across from her, those amber eyes never leaving her face. "Not until I know who's behind this." She picked at the food, her appetite gone. "Tell me about mate bonds." "I don't understand any of this." Kaelix leaned back, candlelight catching in his white hair. "When wolves find their mates, their souls recognize each other. The bond forms in stages. Recognition, claiming, completion. We're at recognition now, which means we're vulnerable. Incomplete bonds make both parties weak, easier to manipulate or kill. So someone's trying to kill me to weaken you. Or trying to kill you because they know what you'll become when the bond is complete." His gaze intensified. "Tell me about yourself, your past." Dawna's throat tightened. "There's nothing to tell. 5 years ago, I woke up in a forest, wounded and alone. No name, no past, nothing, just fragments and darkness. Something flickered in his expression, concern, suspicion. Before he could respond, a servant entered with wine. Kaelix's hand shot out, snatching the goblet before Dawna could reach it. He brought it to his nose, and his face transformed into something feral and terrifying. The goblet shattered against the wall. Guards. Everything happened at once. Theron burst through the door. The servant was seized, screaming protests. And then another figure appeared in the doorway, cold and composed. Morse, the master of arms. He was broad-shouldered and cruel-eyed, his mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "My king, I was merely testing your security protocols," Morse said smoothly. "Given the recent attack, I needed to ensure your guards were vigilant." "By poisoning my mate?" Kaelix's voice was deadly quiet. "By exposing weaknesses before your enemies do." The two men stared at each other, tension crackling like lightning between them. Dawna watched Morse carefully, and ice flooded her veins when his gaze shifted to her. Recognition flashed in his eyes. Not surprise, not curiosity, recognition. He knew her. After Morse left with false assurances and thin smiles, Dawna lay in the darkness, unable to sleep. Kaelix worked at his desk by candlelight, and she found strange comfort in his presence. When sleep finally claimed her, the nightmare came swift and merciless. She was running through a burning palace, smoke choking her lungs. A woman screamed her name. Flames devoured tapestries bearing silver wolves, and behind her, hunting her through the inferno, was a figure with cold, cruel eyes. Morse's eyes. Dawna woke up gasping and found Kaelix already at her side, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "What did you see?" he asked softly. "Fire," she whispered. "And him. He was there. In my past, Morse was there." The days that followed took on a strange rhythm that Dawna had never experienced before. She woke to find Kaelix already working at his desk, reviewing reports and correspondence. He would glance up when he sensed her stirring, and something in his expression would soften in a way that made her chest ache. "Come here," he said one morning, gesturing to the papers spread before him. "If you're going to be my queen, you need to understand how this kingdom functions." Queen. The word still felt foreign on her tongue, impossible. But she crossed to him anyway, drawn by curiosity and something deeper she didn't want to name. He taught her about pack hierarchies, about the delicate balance between the noble houses, about trade routes and territorial disputes. She absorbed it all, and found herself asking questions that made him pause, made him look at her with growing interest. "The eastern border," she said, studying a map. "If you reinforced the garrison there, you'd prevent raids before they happen rather than responding after." Kaelix stared at her. "That's exactly what my father did 30 years ago." "How did you know?" She didn't. The knowledge had simply been there, rising from some deep place she couldn't access. "I don't know." "You think like a leader, not a rogue." His hand found hers on the desk, fingers intertwining. "Like you were trained for this." The touch sent warmth spiraling through her, and she pulled away, unsettled by how much she craved it. The training sessions were worse. Kaelix insisted she learn to defend herself. And the moment he placed a blade in her hand, something clicked into place. Her body knew the movements before her mind did. Parry, thrust, deflect. She moved with precision that shocked them both. "Where did you learn that?" Kaelix demanded, breathing hard after she'd nearly disarmed him. "I didn't." Fear crept into her voice. "I don't remember learning anything." That night, the dream came again. She was younger, smaller, running through corridors lined with silver tapestries. Behind her, a woman's voice called out, desperate and terrified. "Dawna, run, don't look back." Dawna. Her name. She'd always known it was hers, but hearing it spoken with such anguish, such love, cracked something open inside her chest. She woke up gasping, tears streaming down her face. Kaelix was there instantly, pulling her against his chest, his hand smoothing through her hair. "Breathe," he murmured. "Just breathe. I've got you." She clung to him, and for the first time in 5 years, let herself be held, let herself be weak. The summons came the next morning. A formal delegation of nobles demanding an audience with the king. Dawna heard them from behind the chamber doors, their voices sharp with indignation. "The court demands to see this supposed mate, your majesty, or you must choose another before the blood moon." Kaelix's response was cold fury. "I've made my choice." But when he returned to the chambers, his expression was grim. "They want a formal presentation. A ball in 3 days." Dawna's stomach dropped. "I can't. They'll see exactly what I am. A nobody. You're mine." He cupped her face, fierce and gentle. "That's all they need to see." The preparation was torture. Servants dressed her in a gown of silver silk that clung to her frame, braided her hair with moonstones, painted her face until she looked like someone else entirely. Someone worthy. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a stranger. "I look like an imposter," she whispered. "You look like a queen," Kaelix said from the doorway, his gaze heating in a way that made her skin flush. Theron appeared as evening fell, his expression troubled. He pulled Kaelix aside, speaking in low tones, but Dawna's wolf hearing caught every word. "I traced Morse's movements from 5 years ago. He traveled to House Silvercrest territory, left just before the massacre." Kaelix went very still. "When exactly?" "The same week the princess disappeared. The same week every royal in that house was slaughtered." Dawna's blood turned to ice. The timing matched perfectly. The week she'd woken in the forest, wounded and nameless, was the same week an entire royal bloodline had been destroyed. And Morse had been there. The grand hall stretched before her like a glittering battlefield. Hundreds of nobles in silk and jewels turned as one when the herald announced their entrance. And Dawna felt the weight of every judgmental stare like a physical blow. "A rogue?" the whisper carried from somewhere in the crowd. "No lineage at all," I heard. "Unworthy of an Alpha King." Kaelix's hand tightened on her waist, possessive and grounding. He guided her down the marble steps with the confidence of a man who'd never questioned his place in the world, while Dawna felt like she was walking to her execution. "Lords and ladies," Kaelix's voice rang out, silencing the murmurs. "I present to you my mate Dawna." The silence that followed was worse than the whispers. Then Morse stepped forward from the gathered nobles, his expression carefully neutral. But Dawna saw the calculation in his eyes. "My king," Morse said, his voice carrying across the hall. "Forgive my concern, but how can we trust a wolf with no past, no family, no history?" He turned to address the crowd. "In these uncertain times, could she not be a spy, an assassin sent to weaken our kingdom from within?" The hall erupted in anxious conversation. Dawna felt Kaelix go rigid beside her, but before he could respond, other voices joined Morse's. "The Master of Arms raises valid concerns," an elderly lord called out. A woman in crimson silk, Lady Seraphine, stepped forward, her beautiful face twisted with disdain. "She's a threat to our kingdom, to our king. This whole situation reeks of deception. Enough." Kaelix's voice cracked like thunder. But the damage was done. Doubt had been planted, and Dawna could see it spreading through the assembled nobles like poison. The reception that followed was suffocating. Nobles kept their distance, their conversation stopping whenever she drew near. Dawna stood at the edge of the celebration, watching Kaelix navigate political discussions while she remained isolated. A curiosity to be studied and dismissed. A servant approached with wine. Dawna took the goblet gratefully, needing something to do with her trembling hands. The first sip burned down her throat, and she drank deeper, seeking courage she didn't possess. Then the burning intensified. Her throat seized. The goblet slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. Pain exploded through her chest, radiating outward like fire in her veins. Silver, The wine had been laced with concentrated silver, enough to kill a wolf within minutes. She collapsed, gasping, clawing at her throat. The crowd scattered, horrified screams echoing through the hall. Kaelix was there instantly, catching her before she hit the ground, his face a mask of terror and rage. "Get a healer," he roared. But something was happening. The burning intensified until Dawna thought her skin would peel away, but then it began to subside. Not slowly, but rapidly. Impossibly. The silver that should have been spreading through her bloodstream, stopping her heart, was being neutralized. Her body was fighting it off in a way that defied everything anyone knew about wolf physiology. The nobles watched in stunned silence as color returned to her face, as her breathing steadied, as she survived what should have been certain death. Kaelix swept her into his arms and carried her from the hall, ignoring the chaos erupting behind them. In the privacy of his chambers, he set her down gently, his hands checking her for damage, his expression wild with confusion and fear. "You survived concentrated silver," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's not normal. That's not possible." Dawna stared at her hands, trembling violently. "What am I?" The question came out broken, terrified. "What's wrong with me?" "Nothing's wrong with you," but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Then the memory flashed, sudden and vivid. A woman with silver hair leaning close, her expression serious, a small crown being placed on a child's head. "Your blood is different, special. Never forget that, my darling. You are the last of our line, and your blood carries magic older than the wolves themselves." Dawna gasped, the memory fragmenting as quickly as it had come. But the words remained, echoing in her mind like a prophecy she didn't understand. The announcement came the next morning, delivered by a delegation of nobles who'd clearly coordinated with Morse. A grand ball in 1 week where Alpha King Kaelix would make his final choice of mate before the assembled court. Dawna stood by the window, listening to the political maneuvering in the next room, and felt something inside her crack. She was trapping him. Her presence, her inability to prove her worth, was backing him into a corner where he'd have to choose between his mate bond and his kingdom. When the delegation left, she turned to face him. "Let me go." Kaelix went very still. "What?" "I won't trap you with an incomplete bond. Your court doesn't trust me. Someone's trying to kill me. If I leave, you can choose someone worthy. Someone who can actually help you rule." He crossed the room in 3 strides, gripping her shoulders with barely restrained intensity. "You are my mate. There is no choice. There has never been a choice." His amber eyes blazed. "I would burn this entire kingdom to ash before I let you walk away from me." The week that followed was a blur of preparation. Theron drilled her on court etiquette, teaching her which nobles held power, which families harbored grudges, and how to navigate the treacherous waters of royal politics. Dawna absorbed it all with an ease that surprised them both, as if the knowledge was simply waiting to be remembered rather than learned. The dreams intensified. Night after night, she saw herself as a child, small hands reaching for a silver crown. A woman who looked like an older version of herself, with the same silver-white hair and delicate features, placed the crown on her head. "You are the last of our line, Dawna. Never forget what you carry in your blood." She woke from these dreams with tears on her face and Kaelix's arms around her, grounding her in the present even as her past tried to claw its way to the surface. On the 4th day, restless and seeking distraction, Dawna wandered the castle corridors. She turned a corner and found herself in a long gallery lined with tapestries. Most depicted great battles, famous hunts, ceremonies under full moons. But one made her freeze in her tracks. Silver wolves with crowns. A palace of white stone and gleaming towers. And in the corner, barely visible, the same palace consumed by flames. House Silvercrest. The recognition hit her like lightning, stealing her breath. She knew this place, not from history lessons or stories, but from memory. She'd run through those corridors. She'd played in those gardens. She'd lived in that palace before it burned. Dawna? Kaelix's voice came from behind her, concerned. What's wrong? She couldn't speak, could only point at the tapestry with a trembling hand. He studied it, then her, understanding dawning in his eyes. The Silvercrest massacre. 5 years ago. 5 years ago. The night of the ball arrived too quickly. Servants dressed her in a gown of pure silver that seemed to shimmer with its own light, braided her hair with moonstones and delicate chains until she looked like something out of legend. When Kaelix saw her, he stopped breathing. "You look like a queen," he said, his voice rough with emotion and something darker, more possessive. The ballroom was a sea of silk and jewels, of watching eyes and predatory smiles. Every noble house had sent representatives, all eager to witness the Alpha King's choice. Dawna felt their stares like knives as Kaelix led her onto the floor. Music swelled. Other nobles approached, ladies in elaborate gowns expecting the king to dance with them, to consider them. Kaelix didn't even glance their way. He pulled Dawna into his arms and moved with her across the floor, his gaze never leaving hers. "My king," Lady Seraphine called out, her voice sharp. "Surely you'll honor the other houses with a dance?" "No." Kaelix's response was flat, final. The music ended. He turned to face the assembled court, keeping Dawna's hand firmly in his. "She is my mate, my choice, my queen. Anyone who questions that questions me." The ballroom erupted. Some nobles bowed, moved by the declaration. Others exchanged dark looks, their hostility palpable. The court had divided before their eyes, and Dawna knew with cold certainty that the real battle was only beginning.
Stop right here. If you haven't subscribed yet, you're making a huge mistake. The next part is where everything explodes. Morse's betrayal, the imprisonment, the memories returning, and you do not want to miss it. Drop a comment telling me what you think Morse will do to destroy them, then smash that subscribe button before you forget. Seriously, do it now.
The celebration reached its peak, wine flowing and music swelling, when Morse strode to the center of the ballroom. His timing was perfect, calculated to cause maximum damage. The music died as he raised his hand, commanding attention with the authority of his position. "My king, forgive this interruption, but I can no longer remain silent." Morse's voice carried to every corner of the hall. "I have evidence that this woman is not what she claims to be." The room went deathly quiet. Dawna felt Kaelix's hand tighten on hers, felt the tension coiling through his body. Morse produced a leather folder, opening it with theatrical precision. Letters intercepted from enemy territory. Testimony from witnesses who saw her in the southern kingdoms weeks before she appeared here. She is a foreign agent, sent to seduce our king and weaken our realm from within. "That's a lie," Kaelix snarled, but nobles were already murmuring, fear and suspicion spreading like wildfire. "Her convenient amnesia," Morse continued, his voice dripping with false concern. "Her impossible survival of silver poisoning, which can only be explained by dark magic. And this." He held up a piece of fabric, a symbol embroidered in gold thread, found among her belongings. The mark of the Eastern Coalition, our sworn enemies. Dawna's blood ran cold. She'd never seen that symbol before. It had been planted, but proving that was impossible. The court erupted in outrage. Nobles shouted demands for justice, for protection, for her immediate arrest. Lady Seraphine's voice rose above the rest. "She's bewitched our king. She must be imprisoned. This is fabricated." Kaelix's roar silenced the crowd momentarily. "I will not allow baseless accusations." "Then prove it, Your Majesty." Morse's expression was sympathetic, reasonable, the perfect mask of a loyal servant. "If she's innocent, imprisonment won't harm her. We can investigate properly, find the truth. But if you refuse, the court will believe you're compromised. that she's already gotten her claws too deep. The trap closed with perfect precision. Refusing meant appearing weak, controlled, unfit to rule. Accepting meant betraying his mate. Dawna saw the calculation in Morse's cold eyes, and saw how thoroughly he'd orchestrated this moment. She turned to Kaelix, saw the anguish in his face, and made the choice for him. "Do it," she whispered. "We'll prove the truth." Dawna, "No. If you fight this, he wins. He'll use it to turn the entire court against you." She squeezed his hand one last time. "I trust you to find the truth." The look in Kaelix's eyes nearly broke her. But he gave the order, each word seeming to cost him something vital. "Take her to the dungeons. But if anyone harms her, they answer to me." The guards seized her arms, and the incomplete mate bond screamed in protest. Dawna felt it like a physical wound, the separation tearing at something fundamental in her chest. Kaelix's face was a mask of barely controlled rage and grief as they led her away. The dungeons were everything she'd feared. Cold stone, dampness seeping through her silver gown, and bars reinforced with silver that made her skin prickle with proximity. They locked her in a cell at the far end, where the torchlight barely reached, and left her in darkness. Dawna finally let herself weep. For the mate she might lose, for the life she couldn't remember, for the fear that Morse would win. Exhaustion claimed her eventually, pulling her into sleep she didn't want. The memory came with brutal clarity. She was running through her childhood palace, small feet pounding on marble floors. Behind her, smoke and screams. Warriors in black armor cutting down everyone they found. And leading them, directing the slaughter with cold efficiency, was Morse. Her mother grabbed her, desperate and terrified, shoving her toward a hidden passage. "Run, Dawna. You're the last. Don't let them find you." "Mama, no. Go." The passage sealed behind her. She ran through darkness while her family died above. Ran until she burst into the forest, wounded and disoriented. Ran until her mind fractured under the trauma, burying the memories too painful to bear. Dawna woke up gasping, the truth crystallizing with devastating clarity. She was Princess Dawna of House Silvercrest, and Morse had murdered her entire family. Dawna sat in the darkness of her cell, the truth of her identity settling over her like armor. She was no longer the lost rogue questioning her worth. She was Princess Dawna of House Silvercrest, and the man who'd destroyed her family was walking free in the castle above. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Torchlight flickered, and Morse appeared beyond the silver bars. He carried no guards, no witnesses, just that cold smile she'd come to recognize. "I knew I recognized you," he said, studying her like a curiosity. "It's been nagging at me since you first arrived. The eyes, the way you move. But you were supposed to be dead. You killed my family." Dawna's voice was steady, cold. "You murdered children. I followed orders. Very lucrative orders." He leaned against the bars, close enough that the silver made her skin burn. The Eastern Coalition paid well to eliminate House Silvercrest. Your bloodline was too powerful, too influential. You threatened their expansion plans. I was a child. You were at a loose end. His expression hardened. "I've been searching for you for 5 years. Imagine my surprise when you walked right into the capital." He laughed, the sound scraping against her nerves. "You were supposed to die with the rest of them, but don't worry, Princess. I'll finish the job soon enough. And when you're gone and Kaelix is broken by grief, I'll take his throne too." He walked away, his laughter echoing through the dungeons, leaving Dawna shaking with rage and determination. She would not die in this cell. She would not let him win. Above, in the castle archives, Kaelix tore through records with Theron at his side. They'd been searching for hours, following every thread, every inconsistency in Morse's fabricated evidence. Here, Theron pulled out an old tome. House Silvercrest. The massacre 5 years ago. Every royal killed except... He paused, reading ahead. Except the youngest daughter, Princess Dawna. Her body was never found. Kaelix's heart stopped. Show me. Theron unrolled a portrait, carefully preserved. A royal family in silver and white. And there, smallest among them, was a girl with silver-white hair and eyes he'd recognize anywhere. It's her. His voice broke. She's not a spy, she's a queen. They found more. Payment records showing gold flowing from the Eastern Coalition to Morse 5 years ago. Travel documents placing him at the Silvercrest Palace the night of the massacre. Testimony from survivors who'd seen a man matching his description leading the attack. Kaelix ran. He burst into the dungeons, Theron close behind, and found Dawna standing at the bars, her face illuminated by torchlight. The separation had been agony, the incomplete bond tearing at them both, but when their eyes met, everything else fell away. I remember everything, she said before he could speak. I'm Princess Dawna of House Silvercrest, and Morse killed my family. I know. He gripped the bars, hating the silver that kept him from touching her. I found the portrait, the records, all of it. She told him about Morse's visit, his confession, and his plans. With each word, Kaelix's rage grew until it was a living thing, barely contained. I'm getting you out, now. Wait. Her hand reached through the bars, stopping just short of his. If you free me openly, he'll accelerate whatever he's planning. We need to be smart about this. Theron produced keys he'd taken from the guard station. The blood moon ceremony is in 2 days. All the high nobles will be present. We expose him there, publicly, with evidence he can't deny. They moved through secret passages Theron knew, passages that wound through the castle walls like veins. They emerged in the temple where preparations for the blood moon were already underway. Hiding Dawna in the priestess's chambers, Kaelix pulled her close, finally able to touch her without silver between them. The relief of her presence, her warmth, nearly brought him to his knees. We end this together, he said fiercely. As equals, she agreed. Then he kissed her. Not the careful, tentative connection they'd shared before, but something desperate and claiming and full of promise. She kissed him back with equal intensity, and the mate bond flared between them. Not complete but powerful, binding them in purpose and fury and love that transcended memory or time. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Dawna's eyes blazed with determination. Let's take back what he stole from both of us. The blood moon rose massive and crimson over the temple, bathing the ancient stones in light that seemed almost alive. Every high-ranking wolf in the kingdom had assembled for the ceremony, nobles in ceremonial robes filling the grand hall while incense smoke curled toward the vaulted ceiling. Kaelix stood before the altar, his white hair gleaming in the moonlight streaming through the open roof. He wore the ceremonial armor of his ancestors, silver and black, and the crown that marked him as Alpha King. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the sacred space. Tonight, under the blood moon, I complete my mate bond. Whispers rippled through the crowd. They'd expected this ceremony to be postponed, cancelled, forgotten after the prisoner's disgrace. I call upon my mate to join me. The priestess opened the chamber doors, and Dawna emerged in ceremonial robes of silver and white, moonlight catching in her hair like starfire. She moved with the grace of royalty, head high, no longer the uncertain rogue but something far more dangerous. The court erupted in shock. The prisoner? How did she? This is madness. Morse's face went white, then red with fury. He'd been outmaneuvered, and Dawna saw the moment he made his choice. His hand signaled, sharp and decisive. Warriors in black burst through the temple doors. Not palace guards but hired soldiers, their blades already drawn. They fell upon the assembled nobles with brutal efficiency, and the sacred ceremony dissolved into chaos and screaming. "Protect the king," Theron's voice rang out as loyal guards engaged the attackers. But Morse was already moving, cutting through the chaos toward Kaelix and Dawna. His blade flashed in the crimson moonlight, and this time he wasn't hiding behind politics or poison. This was naked ambition backed by steel. Dawna met him with a sword she'd taken from the temple wall. Their blades clashed, and she moved with precision that made him falter. This wasn't the frightened rogue he'd terrorized in the dungeons. This was a princess trained from childhood in the art of war. "You should have stayed dead," Morse snarled, pressing his attack. "Princess?" The word gasped from a dozen noble throats. Kaelix fought his way to her side, moving in perfect synchronization, as if they'd trained together for years. "She is Princess Dawna of House Silvercrest, sole survivor of the massacre this traitor orchestrated." Theron threw documents into the center of the hall, evidence scattering across blood-stained marble. Payment records, travel documents, testimony. All of it proved Morse's guilt even as battle raged around them. Morse's attack became desperate, vicious. "Your bloodline was supposed to be eliminated. The coalition paid me to ensure no Silvercrest survived. My bloodline survived for a reason." Dawna's voice rang with power that made the temple stones tremble. Light erupted from her skin, silver and brilliant, the ancient magic of House Silvercrest finally awakening. It had been dormant, suppressed by trauma and amnesia, but now it blazed like a star. Her strength multiplied, her speed became inhuman, and when she struck, Morse's blade shattered. "Impossible," he breathed, staggering backward. "Your bloodline should be powerless." "You know nothing about my bloodline." Dawna's blade found his shoulder, then his leg, driving him down. "You killed children. You destroyed families. You violated sacred ground." Another strike, and he fell to his knees. "And you will answer for all of it." Morse collapsed before the assembled court, bleeding and broken. His hired warriors, seeing their commander defeated, threw down their weapons and surrendered. Silence fell over the temple, broken only by heavy breathing and the crackle of disturbed incense. The blood moon shone through the open roof, illuminating Dawna as she stood over her family's murderer, power still crackling around her like lightning. The court stared in awe and terror. The nobles who'd called her unworthy now saw what she truly was, not a rogue, not a spy, but a queen who'd survived the unsurvivable, who carried magic in her blood, who'd just defeated the man who'd orchestrated treason against two kingdoms. Kaelix moved to her side, and their hands found each other naturally. The mate bond pulsed between them, stronger now, ready for completion. "2 crowns," he said softly, for her ears alone. "2 kingdoms, 1 bond." Guards hauled Morse to his feet, chains binding his wrists as blood dripped from his wounds. His conspirators were dragged forward one by one, nobles who'd taken his gold, warriors who'd followed his orders, all of them exposed under the unforgiving light of the blood moon. Kaelix's voice cut through the shocked silence. "Speak. Tell them what you told the princess in her cell." Morse's defiance crumbled under the weight of his defeat. The confession spilled out before the assembled court. The Eastern Coalition's payment to eliminate House Silvercrest. The massacre he'd led personally. His 5-year search for the surviving princess. His plan to use her death to destabilize Kaelix's rule and seize the throne. When he finished, the silence was absolute. Kaelix turned to address the court, his hand never leaving Dawna's. "This woman is my mate, and your queen by right of 2 crowns. She is Princess Dawna of House Silvercrest, sole survivor of the royal bloodline that ruled the southern territories for 3 centuries." Theron stepped forward with the evidence they'd gathered. The portrait was unrolled, and gasps echoed through the temple. The resemblance was undeniable. An elderly she-wolf pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. "I served House Silvercrest for 40 years. I was there the night of the massacre." She approached Dawna with trembling hands. "You have your mother's eyes, child. The same silver hair, the same bearing. There's no doubt who you are." Other elders came forward, wolves who'd known the Silvercrest family, who remembered the lost princess. Their recognition sealed what evidence had proven. The blood moon reached its peak. Crimson light flooding the temple until everything was bathed in sacred fire. The priestess stepped forward, her voice resonant with ancient power. The blood moon witnesses, let the bond be completed. Kaelix and Dawna moved to the altar as one. The priestess began the traditional ceremony. Words in the old tongue that spoke of souls recognizing souls, of destinies intertwined across lifetimes. Kaelix took Dawna's hands, his amber eyes burning with intensity that stole her breath. I claim you as my mate, my queen, my equal, in this life and all that follow. I claim you as my mate, my king, my partner. The bite came simultaneously, ancient ritual and primal claiming merged into one. Teeth at the throat, the taste of copper and magic. A golden thread materialized between them, visible to everyone present, pulsing with power that grew stronger with each heartbeat. Light erupted from where they stood, silver and gold intertwining, rising toward the blood moon like a pillar of pure magic. Dawna felt her full heritage activated. The dormant magic of House Silvercrest, carried in bloodlines stretching back to the first wolves, awakened completely. She was a wolf, and more than a wolf, ancient power and new beginning, destruction survived and strength reborn. Kaelix gasped as her power flowed into him through the completed bond, amplifying his own strength until he blazed with it. They were no longer two separate beings but something greater, unified and unstoppable. The light faded slowly, leaving them standing in the center of the temple, the golden thread of their bond still visible, still pulsing with shared heartbeats. The court fell to their knees. Even the doubters, even those who'd questioned and conspired, bowed before the undeniable truth of what they'd witnessed. Later, in the privacy of chambers that now belonged to both of them, Kaelix held Dawna with a tenderness that belied the fierce claiming of hours before. She traced the mate mark on his throat, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. I spent 5 years believing I was nobody, she whispered, believing I was worthless. You were always worthy. He tilted her face up, amber eyes soft with devotion. You were always home. You just had to find your way back. She kissed him, and this time there was no urgency, no desperation, just the slow, certain knowledge that they had forever. The bond hummed between them, complete and unbreakable, promising strength and partnership and love that would reshape kingdoms. I'm home, Dawna said against his lips, finally believing it. I'm finally home. 1 month later, the grand temple stood transformed. Where blood had been spilled on sacred ground, now flowers bloomed in impossible profusion, as if the earth itself celebrated the union of two kingdoms. Nobles from both territories filled every space, their banners intermingling in a display of unity that would have been unthinkable mere weeks ago. Dawna stood before the ancient altar in robes of silver and white, the crown of House Silvercrest resting on her brow. It had been recovered from the ruins of her family's palace, cleaned and restored, a symbol of survival against impossible odds. Beside her, Kaelix wore his own crown, and together they faced their people as equal sovereigns. The high priestess raised her hands. I present to you Queen Dawna of House Silvercrest, rightful ruler of the southern territories, and Alpha King Kaelix of the northern realm. 2 crowns, 1 bond, united in purpose and power. The roar of approval shook the temple walls. Even former doubters had been won over by the evidence of Morse's treachery and the undeniable power of the completed mate bond that still glowed faintly between the royal pair. Dawna's first act as queen was to issue a decree that her voice was steady and clear. No one in our united kingdom will be nameless. No one will be cast out or forgotten. To every rogue, every displaced wolf, every soul who believes they have nowhere to belong, I say this: you have a home here. The words came from lived experience, from 5 years of wandering alone. and they resonated with hundreds who'd suffered similar fates. Tears fell freely among the crowd. In the weeks that followed, the work of rebuilding began in earnest. The ancestral lands of House Silvercrest, long abandoned and scarred by fire, saw new construction. A temple rose on the grounds where the massacre had occurred, dedicated to those who'd been lost, ensuring their memory would endure. Morse's execution was swift and public. Justice served before both kingdoms. His conspirators faced their own reckonings, some imprisoned, others stripped of titles and lands. The Eastern Coalition, faced with evidence of their hired massacre, was forced to pay reparations that would fund the Southern Territory's restoration for generations. As sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Dawna and Kaelix stood on the battlements, overlooking their joined kingdoms. The mate bond hummed between them, comfortable now, as natural as breathing. "A year ago, I had no name," Dawna said softly, watching the sun sink toward distant mountains. "Now I have 2 kingdoms, a mate, a future I never imagined possible." Kaelix pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "You always had them. You just had to remember who you were. We'll build something better," she said, determination threading through her voice. "A kingdom where children aren't murdered for political gain, where the vulnerable are protected, not exploited." Together, his hand covered hers on the stone battlework, as equals. Dawna's other hand drifted to her stomach, a secret smile playing at her lips. She felt the change, subtle but undeniable, a new life beginning to form. The bond carried that knowledge to Kaelix instantly, and she felt his sharp intake of breath, his wonder and fierce protectiveness flooding through their connection. "An heir," he whispered, reverent, "to 2 crowns. To a better world," she corrected gently. As darkness fell, they shifted together, 2 wolves racing across the moonlit grounds. One silver-white, one with flowing pale fur that caught the starlight. The golden thread of their mate bond shimmered between them, visible even in wolf form, a testament to power that transcended form or time. They ran together through the night, equal and unstoppable, carrying the weight of 2 kingdoms and the promise of a future where no child would wake alone in a forest, nameless and afraid, where justice would prevail over ambition and love would prove stronger than any conspiracy. Together, they would ensure it.
If you made it this far without subscribing, I need you to subscribe right now. From nameless rogue to queen of 2 kingdoms, Dawna's transformation was epic. What was your favorite moment? The arrow attack? The mate bond? The battle with Morse? Comment below and then subscribe immediately so you never miss another story like this. Don't be that person who misses out. Hit that button now.